do an update with Miss Rarely Wrong, and after quite a bit of time lunging, we're actually going to almost the complete opposite strategy. We're going from a strategy that I call allowing discovery, which is lunging, into giving guidance. So where we give more support, more aids, more direction. And those are just two different ways to work with our horse, giving them freedom of choice, which allows them to figure things out. And it took a while, but Rarely was able to go from sort of a flunking grade on the lunge line where she had no emotional or physical self-control into at least a consistent C grade. Like, wasn't perfect, but it was sort of passing. And in that time too, we looked at changing Rarely's supplement program. And before we were doing that, the vet recommended that we just do a CBC chem, some basic blood work to sort of see where she was at since the last time we changed her diet and adjusted her supplements. And so, much to our surprise, and I guess intuitively I knew something was off because Rarely is still having high and low, pretty big high spikes of anxiety. And usually at my barn, and after 3 months of working on the learning frame of mind, that just kind of goes away. And for Rarely, it was a bit persistent. She worked through essentially what I wanted her to discover, some emotional control on the lunge line, given complete freedom of choice, other than changing direction. And when we got the blood work back, turned out she had a lot of issues going on with her liver. To the point that there's potentially liver damage. And so we basically had to take her off all of her supplements, put her on one supplement just to help restore the function of the liver, and some medication. So that's been a couple of weeks now, which I think has been since I did the last video. And so I also decided to switch strategies, giving her more support, asking her to work harder physically, especially through her back and hindquarter. Because the other thing I noticed, one of the reasons she got a C instead of an A+ on her lunging, was she has a lot of difficulty using her back and hindquarter to the point that she can really sustain the posture of long and low. So if the back and hindquarter are unstable or weak, then the horses can't let go of their neck. They can't find length, or they can't sustain the posture of long and low. So long and low is not balanced, but it requires a minimal degree of hindquarter engagement in order for them to stay in that posture of long and low consistently. And that was still difficult for Rarely, I think more on a physical level than an emotional level. She got pretty consistently calm, not perfect, but even when her energy level sort of stabilized, her posture never really fully changed. So going to the long reins is where I have a lot more influence on how she maintains stability through her back and hindquarter. I chose a very small circle because the size of the circle, the tinier the circle is, the more the hind legs have to step up and under towards the center of their body. So the long reins help with feeling the weight shifts left and right, helping to keep the back and the pelvis level. And the size of the circle we're working on, sort of the tinier the circle, the more it encourages engagement of the hindquarters. And the bigger the circle is, the less engagement is required. So we just dove straight into the antithesis of lunging and started with very small circles on the long reins, just at the walk. And I'm just going to show her to the right today. We just started. This is now what she looks like. So she's still a lot calmer than she has been. And as her liver function is improving, I notice that even though she kind of goes through the same motions and actions, it's like that energy level is turned way down. The volume is just way down. I'm not getting the big energy spikes that I was getting before we started treating her liver. And having a unknown liver issue, pretty amazing what she did figure out in the 4 months that I gave her on the lunge line. So now we're going to tuck into the skeletal coordination in order to help her get a little more control through her back and hindquarter. And this is probably the 4th or 5th time we've done this exercise. She really enjoys it. I get a lot more steps with her neck lengthening. Sometimes she's a little bent to the outside. That just talks about the crookedness, the tightness through the shoulders, and the lack of stability left to right. But I think giving her a little more physical assistance is sort of helping her find the posture of long and low and be able to hold it. She comes to it sooner, she goes a little deeper, and she holds it longer. And if she comes out and she is a little bit anxious, it usually isn't taking more than a few minutes for her to just settle into her work. So that calmness factor, and the horse, like, she's concentrating more now and is less distracted, even though the distraction is still there. Again, the volume is turned way down, the intensity level is way down, and I'm seeing the changes I was hoping to see on the lunge line. But she needed the physical support to figure it out. So this is where we're going to work for a little while, and I will play with some of the other groundwork exercises, and I probably won't go back to the lunge line for at least a month or more. Like, I'm going to give her some time to have the physical support, see what she can change, see how it affects her anxiety level, her ability to concentrate, all of that. And especially while we're letting the liver heal up, anything I can do to kind of keep her anxiety level down and keep her more in a parasympathetic state is always going to support the healing process, no matter what's wrong or what's off. So this is good. We're about 10 minutes into it, and you can see, even though she's distracted and she's looking to the outside, part of that is because I'm having to use the outside rein to keep the inside rein straight. So part of that is me putting her head a little to the outside. Part of it is her looking to the outside. But the lengthening of the neck is the direct result of her feeling more stable through her barrel and hindquarter, left to right, feeling more upright through her back, more level across her pelvis. And even that is still coming and going. So when she shortens the neck like that, she's basically pushing the back down and starting to shift weight more rapidly left to right. As I give her the support with the long reins, plus the support of working on a teeny tiny circle, she starts very gradually getting better and better at using her hindquarters, using her back for the job they are intended to do. And every time she kind of gets a little bit better, we're going to see the neck lengthen. When she loses her balance, we're going to see the neck muscles shorten. Right? So there she went from short, now she's starting to play with long. Right? So that change of use in the neck muscles, shortening or lengthening or going one way or the other, even if it's not perfect, is really our visual indicator of how stable or unstable the back and hindquarters are, how easily they can use the back and hindquarter correctly or not. Yeah. And usually what she's been doing the past couple of sessions, I think she had one session where it took her about 10 minutes to settle down. She was a little bit wound up, but that's far less time than what it was taking her on the lunge line. And she's not fighting the support. She's not trying to blow through me. She's not overreactive to the changes of feel I'm giving on the long reins. She just sort of takes the aids, gets a little worse, a little better, a little worse, a little better, gets a little distracted, comes back into focus. And that's, I gotta say, is one of the biggest challenges with Rarely, is just getting her mind to focus on one thing. She's a sensitive mare, and so she's just easily sort of derailed by things that are going on around her. And when we give more support, part of that means the aids are coming more rapidly. Instead of long stretches of time between the aids, they're sort of coming a lot faster, and every little aid can kind of help her focus. So as I change the feel on the long reins, she's feeling the change in tension, the change in support, and that has a way of sort of pulling the horse's attention back into the work, kind of helping them focus. So I think this opposite exercise, and whenever I have an extreme horse, or a horse is just starting rehab and still has anxiety or tension or behavioral challenges, it goes like that a lot of times. I'll go from sort of a very passive exercise where I see what she can figure out for herself, and when you're allowing discovery, kind of only giving aids for the purpose of safety, then time is really the factor. Time is what they need, because it's a lot of trial and error. And I was asking her to figure things out for herself without guidance. Then going to the extreme opposite exercise, where I'm putting her on a very tight circle and using the long reins. Now I'm giving a lot of guidance. Now I'm directly challenging her physical balance. And sometimes that can be helpful for helping the horse kind of settle the mind and find calmness and get more emotional self-control, right? So I like mixing in both strategies, kind of periods where I just let the horse figure it out, and other periods where I'm kind of actively guiding them into something that they can't figure out, that they're not good at. And what Rarely showed me on the lunge line was it's not easy for her to get out of the posture of extension. It's not easy for her to hold the posture of long and low, even when she's calm and when her mind is focused on what she's doing. So that tells me that part of her apparent behavior really has to do with her physical skeletal coordination, that she's not using her body in a way that is making her feel calm and safe, that she's, dysfunctional to the point that she's hyper alert, very sensitive to her surroundings, which kind of translates into the idea that she doesn't really feel safe in her own skin. She doesn't feel like she's got a stable, easy body. And so that feeds the anxiety, and then the anxiety feeds the tension, and the tension makes her skeletal coordination worse, not better. And so all of that cycle is what I was hoping to just interrupt by making kind of a big change in our strategy and saying, hey, let's see if we can't get those hind legs a little more underneath you. Let's see if we can't get that back and hind quarter a little more level, and help you find enough stability through your back and hind quarter that you can start to really, really let go of the neck during forward motion. And so you can see I get a lot more steps where she's really attempting to lengthen her neck. It's not perfect. We have an itch. But you can see the trend now going more obviously out of extension towards long and low. So helping her physically, as we can sort of guide her into that skeletal coordination and stability that she doesn't know, obviously, or is not easy for her physically, the better she gets at it, the result is usually the learning frame of mind gets strengthened as well. So all of her basic handling exercises at halt didn't really, like halt and a controlled walk, doesn't really challenge her physical balance. Once I threw her out on the lunge line and said, you do you, stay at the walk, go faster if you like, bring yourself back to the walk. And only if she halted, I asked her to move again, and only if she tried to change direction did I make a correction. And she figured out the boundaries pretty quick, but 4 months of having to just slowly gain some emotional control over herself tells me how hard it is for her. And usually when it's that difficult for any horse, there's always a physical component. There's always either they're just not comfortable, they're not well coordinated, they may have little lurking issues that we don't know about yet. But her response to the work on the long reins has been exactly what I hoped for. She's able to focus more, she's able to lengthen her neck more, she's able to calm down faster, and she just keeps a little bit of a nicer, steadier rhythm. But without the long reins and without a lot of guidance, she just couldn't figure that out for herself, which is fine. A lot of horses are that way. So that's why I shifted from sort of, can you find your way into emotional self-control, which is really the purpose of the lunge line. Hopefully they figure out a little bit of physical balance on their own too, but she couldn't. That's why she got a C instead of an A+. So realizing she gained the emotional self-control I was looking for, but she could not gain the physical change. I go, okay, let's go into a lot of support. And because that was hard for her, usually horses like that appreciate more support if it's the right exercise in the right way, right? I wouldn't jump on her back and ride her yet. I don't think she could handle that. But I went straight to one of my hardest groundwork exercises for the horse that I use, which is the long reins on a very small circle. And again, just at the walk, because we're still working to reduce anxiety. I don't want the liver stressed, right? And she needs to figure out the coordination with some conscious awareness. And the faster she goes, the more anxious she gets. So we kind of lose that conscious awareness if I start pushing her into faster and faster speeds. So we're coming up to about the 20-minute mark. And that's lovely. I may just show 25 minutes because I have a feeling she's going to start slowing down a bit and keeping her neck longer and longer. Even though my neighbor's out there with the mower and the blower and making all kind of noise again, which usually really kind of derails rarely, she's handling it and she's working through all that distraction just fine. And she's away from the other horses. She can't see the other horses. And those are usually her biggest triggers. Like if there's stuff going on around us and she can't see the other horses, that's when she really struggles to stay calm and focused. So the fact that she's doing as well as she is with everything going on around me tells me we're definitely on the right track by choosing this particular exercise for her right now. Right? And the fact that I see that neck wanting to lengthen faster and she holds it longer, it gets better and better. That's also the sign that physically we're very much on the right track. Yeah, so I'll give it just a few more minutes and we'll see if she can't make a more obvious postural change. I think she's kind of ready to. Of course, she stops as soon as she does. But that's okay. I'm not going to criticize her too much for stopping. We like the thought of her choosing to stop. Very good. And the lawnmower is sort of coming and going next door. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it, but rarely certainly hears it. And she's coping with it very well today. As it comes closer to us, she gets a little distracted like that. And when it goes away from us, she relaxes a little bit more but she's really not having these massive spikes in her kind of energy shift, and she's not as sort of emphatic in her distraction. She just sort of looks, but she doesn't get all tight and anxious about it when she looks. She just takes it in a little better. And there's some more blowing, which is also a confirmation that what we're doing is helping her, that she likes this exercise, that she's feeling the benefit of the exercise. And so as long as she's sort of saying yes in those ways, then we are going to continue with this exercise and just let things develop, see where she goes with it. In this particular exercise too, I usually kind of work my way up to, depending on the horse. But this is an exercise that's difficult enough, challenging to the horse's balance enough, that it's really a preparatory step before riding. And I don't know that she's quite confident or balanced enough to ride, but I thought, let me just go to the opposite extreme and see how she does with a totally different strategy for her groundwork right now. Plus, she's on the meds and her liver is on the mend. The last blood work we did finally showed some improvements. So she's still healing, she's still working it out, but I'm seeing lots of signs of things getting better and better. So that is what we will stick with. And then what I've been doing is also working both directions per session. So my plan today is a full 30 minutes, which is just another 6 minutes this way, according to my watch. 30 minutes to the right, which is her easier direction, so I like to go that direction first, and then 30 minutes to the left. And like I said, this is about our 4th, maybe 5th session of playing with the long reins, and I'm really happy with how she's doing. I'm seeing a lot of good signs, and so this is what we're going to stick with and see where it goes. I know, hang on, let me find my remote. There we go.